our party is on the way to Bazzoxan, and we've introduced a new player. I'll let you know how it goes. So let's dig in. Alright, so in our last session, we introduced a new player, and I'm pretty excited to tell you how that went, but before we do, let's dive into what went well this session. First thing that I think went really well is having the monster stat blocks snipped and little screenshots of them in my Notion. It was much easier for me to navigate, and I didn't have as much back and forth and delay in between combat. And we already know that combat can be a drag as is, so I think that was a huge success. The second thing that I liked is the introduction of the new player. He seems to fit in really well. It helps that he has a little bit of a relationship with one of our players already, but I feel like that went well, and we'll kind of talk about how I introduced him in a little bit. The third thing that I think went well is I introduced an encounter that I wasn't planning for because I felt like there was too much. So I introduced we'll just call him a little bit less than honest NPC, and we'll talk about that as well. What could be better? So something that I feel like could be better is my combat. I felt towards the end of this session that a few of my players were kind of zoning out, and I don't expect everybody to pay attention all the time. It's just not possible. But I feel like I could improve my combat a little bit, so I'm going to do a little bit of digging and thinking about how I can improve that between now and the next session. Okay, so let's talk about what happened during this session. We started off in the middle of day 4 of our party's trek between Jigao and Bazzoxan, and our party had just left off with Jimmy about to get ambushed by a bunch of the Roadside Raiders because he was on the opposite side of a chasm from the rest of the party. We finished that encounter where they fought for a little bit. They knocked a couple of the bandits off into the chasm, and then Chozen, our barbarian, grabbed the leader by the throat and hug him out over the edge of the chasm. And some good rolls on his part and bad rolls on the captain's part, and eventually some intimidation checks, persuasion checks, those types of things. And eventually, the bandit captain, Six Knives, said, "Hey, all right, guys, that's it. We're done. Back off, everyone. We'll give you what you need. Just let us go on our way." So my party convinced him that he's going to need to fix the bridge, and the next, I think, 25 people who pass don't have to pay the tax. My party also found out that the bandits had kidnapped a half-elf bard named Melvin, and this is our new player and how we introduced him. So he'd been kidnapped by the bandits because he was traveling alone. Our party rescued him, freed him from his bonds, and they got some rations from the bandits as well, and convinced Melvin to join them, at least for a little bit, and we'll see how that goes. So yeah, he's kind of joined the party. Everything's going well there. Really good personality of the new player. So far, so good. We'll see how that goes. Again, we're going to monitor that and make sure everyone's still kosher with everything throughout the entire process. We continued to venture on for a little while, and then we slept. And the next day, day 5, we had the Auroran Watch Patrol Lost version. So there is a dead Hezrao body, and my party immediately went up, and Jimmy likes to make things from dead body parts. So he went up and touched it, and as soon as he touched it, I have him make a Constitution saving throw, and he took some damage from the ichor, some necrotic damage. That's just something I wanted to do to kind of teach him. Maybe you should be a little bit careful when you're touching things. It wasn't a ton of damage. I think it was like a D10 or something like that, but it wasn't that bad. And then as soon as he touched that body, I had the Shadow Demons attack Dmitri and Iris. Those two got a ton of damage dealt to them. We nearly took out Dmitri completely, and the Quasits kind of jumped into the battle. Shadow Demons fighting. It was pretty hectic there for a little while. Iris and Dmitri both got really low. Almost lost them both, but eventually the party was successful in defeating the Shadow Demons and the Quasits. After everything was said and done, the battle's over. They investigated, found the dagger that they should in the future be able to trade for a battle axe if they want once they get to the Emerald Loop Caravan stop. Day 6. I felt like we'd had a lot of combat between the Roadside Raiders encounter and the Auroran Watch Patrol encounter. I wanted to switch things up a little bit, so I introduced an NPC. So the person who has the highest passive perception score noticed out of the corner of their eye something following them. They spent a little bit kind of keeping an eye on it, and they noticed there was that little hare, like a hare person. Eventually, they stopped, had a conversation with this person, and just, "Hey, what are you doing? What's going on?" He introduced himself as Henry Hare, and that he had been lost from his family for a good little while. Couldn't even remember. It's been weeks. He was very ragged looking. He looked like he hadn't eaten in a while. So Jimmy, being the good Boy Scout that he is, went up and just gave him some rations, immediately became friends with him. Some of the other members of the party weren't so trusting, but they rolled really low on insight checks. They asked Henry what exactly happened with this family. He just said, "I was hanging out with my family one day. I ran off, and when I came back, they were gone." The party asks, well, where was that at? Can you take us to where that location was? And he says, "Yeah, sure, it's this way." So it's leading him in the same direction they were already traveling. And they made camp that night. And first watch, everything went fine. And then the next watch, Melvin is taking watch and rolls pretty high on a perception check and notices that Henry is trying to sneak a little bit over to Jimmy's bag, and he's going to take a few things. He gets caught by Melvin. Melvin just approaches him and says, "Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm just hungry. I wanted to grab some rations." Melvin was like, "I don't know if I trust that, but okay, go back to your place and go back to sleep. I'm going to keep an eye on you through the rest of the night." The rest of the night goes uneventful. Next morning, Melvin kind of takes Henry off to the side and kind of asks him some questions about what was really going on and whatnot, and then he charms him. So Henry reveals a little bit more information. Again, he doesn't have to tell the truth being charmed, but he does let a few things out. For example, the fact that he is not really lost his family. He is on the road, kind of on the run almost, and he is a pickpocket. Melvin's like, "Hey, that's not cool." He tells the rest of the party. The rest of the party kind of comes in and they're like, "Hey, you need to change your ways. What's going on? Blah, 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 blah." A whole big confrontation happens, and then Henry decides he's had enough of this, and he takes off. As he takes off, a whole bunch of spells were cast. We have people trying to grab him. They miss the grapple checks. We have some entangle spells that he happens to dodge. He rolled really well on his way out. A whole bunch of stuff. We had trying to shoot him with crossbows, all sorts of things. The guy just dodged everything on his way out. So Henry is gone, and my party is kind of keeping an eye on the back. They've trying to cover their tracks, do as much as they can so that whoever Henry is friends with, I'm going to be honest, probably nobody is going to run into them again. I just kind of wanted to teach my party that not every NPC is trustworthy. But they're watching their back, and they're taking it slower now, making sure that their tracks can't be covered. And I mean, they're also traveling on the road between Jigao and Bazalzan, so we'll see how that all plays out. Honestly, I don't know if I'll do anything else with it. Day 7, we finally make it to the Emerald Loop Caravan stop. They kind of get in as the sun's setting, and they can smell food and campfire, and it's kind of a little bit lively atmosphere. They're actually seeing more people. And Dmitri finally meets Balok, and they have a quick conversation about how Balok's life has changed, and now he's joining the Auroran Watch. And that's where we left our session. So we'll pick up next time through the Emerald Loop Caravan stop and see what else my party interacts with. My party, I feel like, is getting pretty anxious to get to Bazalzan, so we may have less encounters between the Emerald Loop Caravan stop and Bazalzan, but we'll see. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I truly do appreciate it. We'll catch you in the next one.